Homage to the Buddha Shakyamuni, dear beloved Thầy, dear beloved family. I know you are here and I'm very happy. Thank you for making the time and the effort to be here. We are in the last part of our 3-month autumn retreat. And today I'm going to share with you about right view. And I thought of sharing a story about my niece, how she learned to make choices. So she's 7.5 years old, and this just happened a few months ago. And she likes the game Would You Rather a lot. The first time when we play Would You Rather, she asked her dad. There were 3 of us, my blood brother, my niece, and I, we were there. And she directed the question to him. And she said, would you rather be with your family or be selling cars? Because he lives far away. He lives in Arizona. And her mother and she live here. And so the first question was a slam dunk. And so for the rest of the game, she kept directing her questions to my brother. And so the second time when we played this game, she said, Daddy, would you rather eat ice cream that tastes like poop? Or eat poop that tastes like ice cream? Have you been posed with that question before? And she forced us to answer that question. And my brother and I, we were debating, you know. And so finally my brother said, okay, I'd rather eat poop that tastes like ice cream. I'm like, I can't believe it. How can you make that choice? And she said, what about you, Chocho, auntie? I'm like, okay, I'd rather eat ice cream that tastes like poop. And so we played a little more, and then it was dark, and she was hungry, and she wanted to go home. And so everything she saw, you know, was food. So she saw my arm, and I was wearing this brown robe, so she said, sausage, sausage. And then she saw something, and she said, ice cream. And I took the opportunity, and I asked her, would you rather eat ice cream that tastes like poop, or poop that tastes like ice cream? And she's like, ice cream. I'm like, no, which one? You know, so I repeated 3 times. I tried to get her. She said, ice cream, just ice cream. And I looked at my brother and I said, can you believe it? She made you eat poop that tastes like ice cream. And she made me eat ice cream that tastes like poop, where she just eats ice cream. Wow. Yeah. And so anyway, when we learn about right view, about pairs of opposite, let's check this out. We have here is a representation of all pairs of opposite. One pair is same versus difference. Am I the same as you, or am I different from you? Nhất dị, giống nhau hay là khác nhau? Okay. The second pair of opposite is being versus non-being. Now, before I was born, was I there already? After I die, will I become nothing? That's being versus non-being. Yeah? Are you choosing ice cream that tastes like poop? Or poop that tastes like ice cream? That's the situation that we put ourselves in. You get it? Okay, the third pair, coming versus going. Coming versus going. I mean, literally, we're flying to somewhere, coming, going somewhere, coming back. Becoming somebody, becoming nothing. The relationship arises, and then the relationship falters apart. That's coming versus going. And the third one, the third pair of opposite is birth versus death. You're born, you have a birthday, and then one day we all will get a death certificate. So these are the choices that we have been posed to, that we impose on ourselves. And what is the right view? Because if we look deeply, we see that it is these pairs of opposites that cause us a lot of suffering, isn't it? The nature of a flower, it manifests. You see how beautiful the flowers are from your place. But as I look closely, I can already see some flowers withering. And even the flower that looks so fresh, if you look very closely, there may be holes on them already. And they, at some point, a few more days, a few more weeks, they will be completely withered. And then we will have to discard them. So the nature of a flower, the nature of our body, the nature of everything is organic like that. That's its true essence. That's just its nature. But because we see it as, oh, that's birth, I should be very happy with the birth. But I should be very sad with death because it no longer is, right? Birth and death, being and non-being, coming and going, same, different. They sound different, but they are all the same. Do you see that? They're all connected. And because we have these discriminations, these preferences, you prefer something beautiful and not something ugly, something that is alive and something that is not, and not something that is dead. We have these discriminations. Therefore, we suffer. We hold on to something, and then when it's slipping in between our fingers, we suffer greatly. So where are these discriminations coming from? These pairs of opposite. I guess if we look into evolution, we can see that it already exists a long time ago. Even the early plants, the early animals, they already had survival instinct, right? They had, the early animals, they already had the fight or flight or freeze response. They experienced that desire to live, to survive, and to try to avoid death. They experienced pain, and they wanted to avoid pain, and they experienced pleasure, and they wanted to seek pleasure through food, through the being in a herd of animals, feeling safe with a mate, etc. So these discriminations existed a long time ago in evolution. but more so with the mammals, what we call as the autobiographical memory formed more. The me, what I did yesterday or before, where, the animal hit the food, the sense of, territory of me and mine and mine, that became more and more developed in the mammals. And of course, as human beings, that sense of the I, the me and the mine become very, very strong. Yeah? That's in Western psychology, we call the ego, the self. And in Vietnamese, we call cái ngã. That sense, the roots of all of these pairs of opposite, and they're not just four, they are infinite. The root of all of that is from that sense of self, that perception that there is a self that is completely separate, that exists independently of everything else. When there is I, the self, and there's you, are we the same or are we different? You see? Are we friends or are we enemies? Do we love each other or do we hate each other? Is our meeting a happiness or a suffering? So then, from that sense of a self, all of these different discriminations and preferences and the suffering and happiness arise. So in a spiritual life, we learn to look deeply into this sense of self. And we question it. And we question our ways of thinking, so that although we have that tendency to discriminate, to see in terms of pairs of opposites, but we are not pulled away by it. We are not swept away by it. We are not driven by it. Because as I said earlier, the nature of things, they are just that. But we label that as beauty versus ugliness, coming versus going, birth versus death. And because we attach notions to that, we suffer. But things as they are, the flower doesn't suffer, right? The tree grows and then it withers, and then it grows and it withers. They'll be continued in different forms. They do not suffer. We suffer because of our ideas and notions. And that is why in a spiritual life, we learn to look at our ideas, notions, perceptions, attitudes. We examine them, we observe them, and slowly, slowly, we bring our view into what we call as right view. So let us enjoy a sound of the bell before we explore what is a right view. Over 10 years ago, a good friend of mine gave me these yin-yang beans. They're very tiny. They're real. And recently, a young friend who practices with us, and he saw these interbeings, and he made this model for me. Isn't that thoughtful? So now you can see the interbeing, the yin-yang being from very far away. So this being is divided into two halves. One half is white and the other half is black. On the white side, there is a black dot. And on the black side, there is a white dot. It's called yin-yang bean, and you can order it online. You can grow these beans, and you actually can eat these beans. And so the other day, when my sisters, they boiled, we call black-eyed beans, and some brothers asked the sister, "Are they yin-yang beans?" So, you see, this is a great model, like a flower. You see that in the white, there's a black, right? In the black, there is the white. So like in the flower, you see that there's the sunshine, there's the water, there's the gardener, there's the air, the earth, infinite elements actually. Isn't it true? Yeah? In the one, there's the all contains. And this illustrates a very deep teaching of the Buddha called interbeing. So when Shakespeare, Hamlet asked the question, to be or not to be, that's the question. Our teacher said, to be or not to be, that is not the question. Because the reality of all things is interbeing. We cannot exist without other elements. The notion of a self, I exist independently. I am myself. Like my best friend in medical school, Jennifer, at the age of 3, she said to her mother, "Your body cannot tell my body what to do." At the age of 3, that sense of a self, of an ego, was already so strong, right? Can you exist without water? Our bodies are made of 2/3 of our body is water. Just like it's like a mirror image of planet Earth, isn't it? 2/3 of planet Earth is water. Can you exist without air? And our body is made of earth, all the solid organs in us, right? So the 4 elements, earth, air, water, and heat, fire, they made up us. They made up our bodies. So that is the teaching of interbeing. And if you look around, you will see not just our monastic brothers and sisters, but we have lay friends who are wearing their short brown jackets because they have received the 14 mindfulness trainings, and we call them the order of interbeing. Okay? So when we practice, we receive the 5 mindfulness trainings, and then we receive the 14 mindfulness trainings. We make a commitment to practice, to realize this deep insight of interbeing in our daily life, to see that these pairs of opposites are creations of our mind, of our discrimination and preferences. But the reality is interbeing. And this can help heal our individualism, our loneliness, our despair. Many young people nowadays, are depressed, have anxiety problems, are suicidal. Many of us hold this suicidal ideation. We think the problem is insurmountable. I can't bear it. I'll just die. When my partner died suddenly in an accident, I touched that depth of despair. And for days, I was driving on a freeway. I would wake up really early in the morning, and I'll get in the car, and I was living in San Francisco. I would just drive along all these cliffs, along the ocean, along the cliffs, and I just wanted to swerve that car. I thought it would just take just a second to swerve that car, and I could just be free from suffering. I didn't have to feel it anymore. I didn't have to face that suffering anymore. Suffering of losing a partner, of somebody you really love, you really cherish. But I was also suffering from losing all my dreams, because all my life I told myself of all the suffering I had to endure in my childhood, if I could just become successful, if I could find somebody who loves me and I love that person, then it'll make up for all the suffering, the loneliness, the despair that I experienced as a child. And here I was, a doctor. I had such a loving partner. And yet I was still drowned in my own suffering, in my own despair. And that suicidal ideation, that wish for death, had always been there in me as a child, because I found that was the quickest way to escape suffering. And so, although my attempts were not successful, but that thought became habitual. So every time when I had a difficulty, I would resort to that option, first thing. And so, of course, when my partner died in an accident, that was the first option that arose in my mind. But somehow I thought about my brother, the only one brother I have. I thought about the patients that I care for, the young people in prison that I worked with during the 6 years of my medical training. Everything good that I did for them, or the love that I gave them, would not compensate the confusion and the pain that my death would cause them. And somehow that saved me. What saved me also, because I had met our teacher and the community, and in particular the practice a few weeks before that. So somehow that gave me hope, and I could, I didn't do it. But now, when we learn about interbeing, when I learn about interbeing, I realize if I were to die in despair, to take my own life away, would that suffering really go away? Yeah, the body would be destructed, would be destroyed. That's not difficult. But the suffering itself, it would live on in my brother. It would live on in his children, in my relatives, in those who knew me, in the consciousness of the world, of the cosmos. When we have this wrong view about the self, we say, this is my body, I can do whatever I want with this body. And that's what happened. We abuse our body. We neglect our body. We don't take good care of our bodies. And then when something happens, we want to use this body to punish the other person. We want to punish ourselves using this very body. But when we learn about interbeing, we see that this body is not our bodies. This body is a transmission from our father, mother, from our grandparents, from our ancestors. They have given us this body. They have entrusted us with this body. We are continuing them. And so when I look at birth and death, which I have had to look at very deeply the last almost 21 years now, since my partner died, I had to look at it very deeply in order to be able to sit in front of you today. Let us enjoy one sound of the bell together. Just breathe, come back. Come back to the in-breath. Come back to the out-breath. See the nature of interbeing in this breath. The in-breath is because the out-breath is. The out-breath is because the in-breath is. I remember when I first went to Plum Village with the intention to ordain as a nun. 3 months after my partner died, I just let go of medicine and gave everything away and went to Plum Village. And sometime in the first year, I just ordained. And one day I went out to a field and there was a forest right there, but an open field before that. And I was screaming and screaming from the top of my lungs because there was just so much pain. When somebody dies, somebody you love, you suffer a lot. Of course, it's because of the attachment you have for the person. But also it causes you to face your own life. How have I lived my life? If I were to die in the midst of the day, can I say I have peace? What do I leave behind me if I were to die suddenly? My partner was somebody who lived a very joyful, meaningful life. He had a spiritual life. I didn't. And so I had a lot of guilt and regret in me as well, because I was so pulled away by the work, by the stress, by my own sadness and despair, that many times I actually pushed him away. And the day that he died, we were supposed to meet with each other. But I said to him, no, I'm busy working in the hospital, so I cannot meet with you. And so on this field, I was just screaming. And at some point, I saw it. It was so clear. I only needed to just keep screaming like that. Just one more second. I could see, I could step. I could cross the threshold from sanity to insanity. I saw it so clearly. I could just cross that threshold and it wouldn't even matter. I could scream, I could cry, I could laugh, I could whatever I wanted to do. And I wouldn't even care. It wouldn't even matter anymore. And in that very moment, it was my ancestors who saved me. And I just took in the deepest breath of my life. Like this, and I just dropped down on my knees. And I just pray, help me to never suffer like this again. Help me to never go there again. Never. And thanks to that deep breath, it just brought me back, because I was completely swept away by my feelings, by my emotions. But that deep breath brought me back to my body, to that moment, and to that deep desire to transform my suffering and not to be a victim of my suffering. And it has been almost 20 years now. I hold on to that breath. I come back to that breath, day in, day out, moment after moment. I just learn to come back to the breath, to anchor the mind in the breath, instead of letting the mind be swept away by thoughts of birth versus death, coming versus going, love versus hate. Let us enjoy one sound of the bell together. Really touch that breath of life. Touch this life that is still flowing through us. Come back. Come back. All of us, we have experienced some kind of trauma in our life. And many of us, unknowingly, we have adapted some coping mechanisms that are not very positive. Some of us may learn to check out our body. So we don't have to feel the body. We don't have to be there to witness whatever that was happening. So we learn to check out. And it becomes a habit to check out. We walk, we talk, we get married, we work, and yet we're never really there in our body. I met a woman just a couple of years ago. She had breast cancer and she had bilateral mastectomy. Both of her breasts were removed. And that day, when we had a day of mindfulness at her workplace, at the end she said to me, she said, Sister D, since I had my surgery for 7 years now, I have not looked at my body from the neck down. She looked in the mirror, she only looked up to here. She couldn't look at the rest of her body. Some of us, we adapted a coping mechanism such as we use drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, sex, relationships, work, ambitions, plans, projects. We find things that will busy our minds, take our mind away from the suffering. But it's never gone. It's always there, undercurrent, and it affects every facet of our life. So when we learn to just simply come back to the breath, moment to moment, we learn to train the mind to come back, to be with the breath, to see that it's shallow, that it's rapid, that is only up to the nostril level or the throat level. To know that is a stressful way of breathing. When we breathe in a very shallow way, we're in stress. And just to be with that, to put our hands on our chest, to put our hands on our belly, and just breathe. Be with the breath, be with the body. Learn to come back. That can be actually very threatening, scary, alienating for many of us. To be with the breath, to be with the body, because we have deserted ourselves for so long. But to come back, to know that the body is the mind. The mind is the body. They inter-are. You see, your sadness, where do you find your sadness? It's in the heaviness of your chest, in the fatigue of your body. Right? Where do you find anger? In the trembling of your hands, in your quickened heartbeat. Every emotion manifests in your body. Your body is a manifestation of your mind. So to take care of our body, to take care of our breathing, is to take care of our mind, is to take care of our sadness, of our despair, of our confusion. It's doable. If we keep resorting to drugs, alcohol, sex, work, suicidal ideation, it becomes a habit. And that habit, that negative coping mechanism, only generates more suffering in our life. In Buddhism, we use an image of a hungry ghost. Have you seen a drawing of a hungry ghost? Or have you seen a walking hungry ghost? Yeah, we have many walking hungry ghosts. The image drawn is drawn of a being with a throat that is needle-like, thin like this, with a belly that is very big. There's a feast in front of the hungry ghost, but because of the needle-like throat, the hungry ghost cannot consume anything. And it keeps everything inside, in the air. It keeps the air in here, all bottled up. We have many hungry ghosts in our society. In my early monastic life, I saw myself as a hungry ghost. Sometimes when it was so difficult to breathe, I just put my hand on my throat and try to breathe and try to visualize my throat opening up slowly and slowly. Just breathe. It's okay. I love you. Everything is okay. I'm still alive. Just close your eyes and put your hand on your throat and breathe. Put another hand on your heart or on your belly and hold yourself. Because you know what? Despite all the suffering that we may have gone through, that we may have put each other through, life is still a feast. There's a lot of love. When you went on walking meditation, did you feel love in the sunlight? Did you feel love in the air? In the steps that you make? In the communal energy? There's a lot of love in our body. Our body is so faithful, is so forgiving. We have starved our body, we have stuffed our body, we have deprived our body of sleep, of rest, of love, but our body continues to be there for us. It tries to heal again and again. So I have learned to come back to the breath, to the body, throughout the day, and to send a lot of love and gratitude to this body. Every time when we think of our body, you are ugly. You're not as beautiful as you should be, as somebody else is. Every time when we send a message to our body, I just want to die. Why don't you just die? Can you imagine what kind of energy that is? It's very harsh. It's very cruel. And it's very powerful to send that sort of energy to ourselves. I have done that so many times in my life. It becomes habitual. You just think of it. You don't even mean it. Many times you don't mean it. It just comes. And yet it has the same effect. Whether you mean it or not, your body still cringes. A dose of adrenaline is still released in your bloodstream. A sadness still sweeps away through your body. And when I got sick, when I came down with Lyme disease, one insight that came to me was that it's because I have sent many harsh messages to my body. And year after year, it got tired, like a boxer You punch him, he'll fall down. He'll get up. You punch him again, he'll fall down, he gets up. But if you keep punching the boxer, at some point he's not going to get up. It's the same thing for ourselves. If we keep punching ourselves, sending very unkind, unloving, cruel messages to ourselves, that's what we're doing. We're punching ourselves again and again. You're stupid. You're worthless. You're nobody. Just die. Go away. So in a spiritual life, we learn to recognize these messages, and we just hold ourselves and say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't mean that. Help me to take better care of you. I learn to tell myself every time a death wish that when it arises, I say, I don't have to wish for death. Death is taking place every moment. Every cell of my body, goes through birth and death. Some old cells die, some new cells are regenerated. It's a process. It's a normal process. I don't have to wish for it. Can I learn to live beautifully? Can I learn to heal my sadness and pain for myself, for my partner, for my mother, for my father, for my brother, for my niece? Can I learn to heal myself for many? Can I learn to die beautifully every moment? Yes, we can learn to die beautifully every moment. Let these notions, these pairs of opposites, release them when they arise. Smile to them. Remind ourselves of the new true nature of interbeing. That is learning to live beautifully and to die beautifully. Okay? Let us enjoy one sound of the bell together. From the concept of a self, of a separate entity, individual existence, it arises the three complexes of inferiority, superiority, and equality. Like all our lives, we always try to prove, I'm better than you. I'm just as good as you. Gosh, I'm not so good. I'm not good enough. We always have to struggle with these complexes. And it's like we put ourselves on auction. It's like, I'm good. How much am I worth? I see more and more clearly, if we don't practice to see these complexes in us, all based on the notion of a separate self, then we are trapped. We are dictated by these complexes in our thoughts, in our speech, in our bodily actions. There's always this insecurity about us. What does she mean? Why is she doing this to me? Are they trying to hurt me? What can I do to get an upper hand of something, on something? It doesn't matter how young we are or how old we are. We're always trying to compete. We're trying to compare ourselves with others. Try to outdo somebody else. We're always coming up with some schemes to protect ourselves, to protect the me and the mind. It's very sad. It doesn't matter how successful, how rich, how powerful one may be, or how old one may be. One still acts so insecure because we are trapped in this notion of a self. In our daily life, if we can come back to the mindful breathing more often, the mind becomes much calmer because the mind is with the breath, is with the body. It's not so free to run out there and generate all sorts of comparisons and contrasts, discriminations and preferences. In our daily life, if you practice walking meditation from your bed to the bathroom, from your car to your office, everywhere you walk, if you can just come back to your steps, left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot, come back, then you actually live your life in that moment instead of being swept away by thoughts about the past or thoughts about the future or thoughts about the present. What's going on can still sweep you away. So there's a place, an island within that we can come back to, and that is our breathing, that is our steps. For many years, when I was doing sitting meditation, it was very hard for me to come back to the breath. But I kept trying, especially when I came down with Lyme disease. Wow, I just sat down and literally I would just be falling asleep, would be nodding off before the bell master started the morning chant or the evening chant. I was so weak. And when I was nodding off, I saw that the mind went into very dark places. It was like dark and vague. And so many thoughts arose, but I couldn't make clear of any thoughts at all muddled up. It's very scary. Maybe we live our daily life, our thoughts are like that, but we don't see it. You know, you just think that's normal to think all the time. When you're awake, when you're sleeping, that's normal, but it's not normal. That is life leakage. You're losing your life juice through every thought that is undetected, unrecognized. That thought can lead to to speech, to bodily actions that are self-destructive, that are hurtful to others. So while I was in this very serious illness for 3 years, I couldn't contemplate at all. But I did my best to anchor my mind in my breath. So at least it didn't get lost in that black hole. And because of that, I saved my mind. Many Lyme patients, they actually just get lost. So lost in their mind that they change their personality. That they would drive home, park in front of the house, and they wouldn't even know that's their house. They just, something seemed familiar, but they were not sure. So they just stay seated in the car. All of us, we waste a lot of mental energy through our thinking. You've heard of the hoarding disorder, right? That those of us who hoard material things, we keep everything, every memento, every single plastic bag, every single box or newspaper or whatever that fits your fancy, you keep all of it. And it becomes a health hazard. It becomes a fire hazard. People cannot even cook because things are all over their kitchen. People get burned inside their house because they don't even find a way out. And the firefighters can't even find a way in. And yet, when their family members tell them they don't see it, they don't believe it, they think it's normal. That's hoarding material things. One can see it, and yet one does not admit to it. Now, many of us, if not all of us, we are mental hoarders. Yes, we hoard. Tích lũy, tích trữ. Thoughts about the past, about the future. Our anger, our fear, our hatred. Experiences that were negative, we hold on to them. Who can see? Who can see those thoughts? We ourselves don't see those thoughts, right? And we are so addicted to them. We wouldn't even want to let go of one thought, right? They are so cherishable. So dear, don't you touch. Don't you try to remove my memories, my thoughts, my treasured suffering. Yes, it's good to see it and to bring some fresh air into our mind, to relax our body, to relax our thoughts. Learn to smile with these pairs of opposites that arise constantly throughout the day, throughout our life, that control us and drive us in our thoughts, speech, and bodily actions. Let us enjoy a sound of the bell together. So in the spiritual life, we learn to live a simple life. It starts with material things. Learn to clear your rooms. The things that you have not used for a year, maybe give it to Goodwill. Give it to somebody else. Clear your garage. Clear your, as nuns and monks, we just have a bed box. And still there can be a lot. I go through my stuff all the time. At least once every 2 months, one every month. When I see somebody with a lot of stuff, I come back to my room and clear more stuff. Yeah, learn to live a simple life. Because when you simplify your life outwardly, you're actually learning to simplify your life inwardly. If you want to go buy a new set of clothes or something, ask yourself, do I really need it? Sure, I want it, but do I really need it? And don't get it right away. Learn to look at that desire, hold it, and breathe with it. Because in this modern time, we are so entitled to everything, especially Americans. I want it, I get it. I Google, buy it online, it comes the next day. I have money. This sense of entitlement, that feeds our ego. That feeds all of these pairs of opposites. There's the me and there's the mind, and I want it to satisfy me, to make me feel good. And so learn to hold off. If you want something, just breathe with it 3 times. Hold it off for a day, a week, a month. Sometimes it's just the next moment you don't want it anymore. You know this robe I wear? My auntie made it, sent it to me in 2003. So this robe I have worn every single morning when I go to sitting meditation, I wear this robe. More or less every single Dharma talk I give, I wear this robe. And this pair of pants, that's a set. And it's so discolored, actually I asked a sister to undo it and sew it inside out. So this morning a sister told me, where do you get that pair of pants that look so dark? I said, actually that's sewn inside out. Yes, I certainly can have another set made for me. But first of all, because it has been with me for so long. This is my Kung Fu robe, my daily practice robe. But if I put it out, nobody will want it. That's the second reason why I keep it. Nobody would want it, right? Yeah, the same thing with our body. Learn to treasure it, however old or ugly or wrinkled or beautiful or young or strong or weak it is. It is ours, my dear. And it's not ours. Take good care of it. Listen to it. Treasure it. Send love to it. It won't be here always. It changes every moment. And yet there's no coming, no going, you see? My partner now, I don't miss him anymore. I don't yearn for him anymore. Because he's me now. I live this life. I am him. When you practice little by little, and you are not pulled away by desire or aversion, you are not pushed and pulled by these pairs of opposite, grasping, pushing. There is a great freedom. great freedom that I really never knew existed. I just thought, if I live my life and I don't have an object of desire, something that I work towards, somebody that I want to have in my life, it would be so boring. It would be so lonesome. And yet I've had all of that and I was still quite lonesome and in despair and restless. But to be able to just sit with yourself, breathe with yourself, be with what is arising within and around you, and not being pushed or pulled by it. If you just touch one moment of it, you see it's a great freedom. And you practice to cultivate those moments more and more. You see? You remove that sense of separateness little by little so that you can be freer to just simply be. And eventually, even what we call as a right view versus a wrong view will not have to be there. But it is a life work. It is a moment-to-moment practice. So my dear ones, I am very happy that you are here, that we have a spiritual family to take refuge in, to practice with. And so whatever you learn from our community, do please apply it in your daily life. These are not just nice notions. These are concrete practices that can help you to have peace within. And if something were to happen, if you were to die in the midst of the day, you will not have to regret. You will not have to be afraid, because you know you have done your best to live as beautifully and to die as beautifully as you can. Thank you for you. Let us sit up beautifully. Come back to the breath. Breathe and smile. Touch that love that is always present in us and around us.